Good evening, I'm Lisa Townsend, your Police and Crime Commissioner for Surrey. Thank you for joining us for our online Policing Your Community event for Waverley. Now, one of my key responsibilities as your Police and Crime Commissioner is to represent your views to the force and to allow you to hear from the force directly, and that's what this evening's event is all about. Joining me in the studio here at our Mount Brown headquarters in Guildford are Chief Constable Tim Meyer and your Borough Commander, Inspector Rob Bryan. We carried out a series of in-person events for policing your community before Christmas. We were actually in Farnham in December, but we wanted to provide an opportunity for those of you who weren't able to get there, or maybe you wanted to hear again, to offer these sessions online as well, so that you could join us from the comfort of your own home, and of course so that you can watch it back later. And please do share it with your friends and family. The recording will be available. You'll be hearing from the three of us about our current priorities for the force, and there'll be a chance for you to ask your questions about policing, both across Surrey and of course specifically in Waverley. Now, we'll do our best to answer as many of your questions as possible, but if we aren't able to get to you this evening, then somebody will be in touch. You can put your questions in the comment box, whether you're watching us on Facebook or on YouTube. Please pop them in the comment box and we will get to as many of them as possible. Now, as your Police and Crime Commissioner, it's my role to hold the Chief Constable to account for the service that you receive as residents across Surrey. Tim Meyer was appointed in January. He was an absolutely outstanding candidate and has been doing some amazing work across the county, and you're going to hear more from him and about his plan. It's a really important time for policing in our county, thanks to the government's uplift programme of recruiting 20,000 extra officers, and in particular thanks to your council tax contributions over the years. Surrey Police has more officers than it's ever had in its history. That's 395 extra officers. There are challenges that come with that, of course. We have a very young workforce, and of course they are still going through their full training. But they will all be out and about in our communities, which is where you tell me that you want to see them. Now, as well as holding the force to account, I also have responsibility for setting a police and crime plan. This sets the strategic direction for the force. Now, the priorities in my plan, which come from the priorities that you told me you wanted to see, are protecting people from harm, working with residents so that you feel safe, preventing violence against women and girls, ensuring safer Surrey roads, and improving the relationship between you, Surrey residents, and the police. And in the last year, my office has awarded over £5 million to preventing violence against women and girls and local services, and that's more money than's ever been provided before. We've also been actively working with the force to improve the response that you get to antisocial behaviour, something that I know matters to many of you, and which I'm sure both the Borough Commander and the Chief Constable will talk about as well. We've also been working closely to improve the service that you receive when you call 101, and some really great progress has been made on that. Nationally, I take the lead on issues relating to transport and road safety, and also on the policing of mental health. A key topic that is ensuring the police are able to respond to those who only the police can help, and something the Chief Constable is taking a lead on here in Surrey. Now, Surrey Police is an absolutely fantastic organisation, but the demand on our police teams has never been greater. And as the Police and Crime Commissioner, I also oversee Surrey Police's budget and assets, and that includes setting the amount of council tax that you pay towards policing. And I have to balance the cost pressures that I know we're all facing with my goal to provide the Chief Constable with the resources that he needs to maintain the service that you receive. And that does include finding a further £17 to £20 million worth of savings over the next 4 years. And we know that's not going to be simple. Now, times are tough, and asking the public for money is never an easy thing to do, and not something that I enjoy doing, but is something that I have to undertake as your Police and Crime Commissioner. The Chief Constable, as I said, is going to shortly set out his vision for policing and his plan for policing our communities across Surrey. And it does focus on what policing does best, and that's fighting crime in our local communities and protecting people. And that is what you tell us that you want to see. But I need to ensure that the force is funded sufficiently to allow the Chief Constable to be able to do that and to keep us all safe. I believe that the Chief Constable's plan will significantly improve the service that we all receive across the county. But in order to achieve it, we do have to maintain sustainable funding and appropriate funding. So if you haven't already done so, you have until 12 o'clock tomorrow to complete the survey on council tax. It also crucially asks you questions about what you want to see the police focus on in your area. Please do let us know what you think about that. The survey itself asks you to consider whether you would support a £13 rise, £10, £11 or £12 a year, or a figure under £10. The Chief Constable has been very clear that an increase of below £10, and that's to an average Band D property, would mean further savings by Surrey Police. An increase of between 10 and 13 would mean the force are able to almost keep pace with inflation and of course keep any staff cuts to an absolute minimum. The maximum increase of £13, which is what the government are asking us to raise this year, would provide the Chief Constable with most of the resources that he needs to achieve his plans of the force, but we would still need to find at least £17 million of savings over the next 4 years. Now, it's really important that the force is constantly working to find savings and efficiencies to ensure that we're giving you, as taxpayers, the absolute best value for money, and of course we want to give you the best service as well. Your contributions through council tax make an enormous difference to our ability to be able to do this. And for every pound raised through council tax, the force receives an extra £500,000. So it really does matter. So if you can, please take just a few moments to fill in that survey. You'll see a QR code pop up in a moment. There it is on your screen. You can use that. It will take you there directly. Do tell us what you want the force to prioritise on as well. Now, I am going to hand over to the Chief Constable. He's going to outline his plan for you. And then after he's spoken, the Borough Commander will, and we will take your questions. Don't forget to pop them in the comments box. Chief Constable.
Thank you, Police and Crime Commissioner, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I'm going to take 10 minutes or so to talk about the 10 key points in my plan, which come under 3 broad headings. The first of which is that we fight crime and protect people. And that might seem a rather obvious point to make, but it is, of course, vital that we restate our determination to get on and do well those things which only the police can. And the first element of this section is to prevent crime and to solve problems. It's, of course, better that crime doesn't happen at all than that we have to deal with it after the fact. And Surrey has a pretty good track record of crime prevention and problem solving in partnership with statutory and non-statutory partners. We've rightly, long before my time, been given credit for this area of work by the Inspectorate, and indeed officers and staff have won awards for our crime prevention and problem solving. But we now need to refocus that experience on the problems which present themselves to us now, including, most prominently, violence against women and girls. Domestic abuse, to take but one element of this problem, is a really, really serious type of crime. We see the most vulnerable, the most dangerous together behind closed doors. And in responding to the call from a domestic abuse survivor who might have been assaulted many times before making contact with us, the police officer must take the vanishingly brief opportunity they have to provide the best service, arrest the perpetrator and bring the suspect to justice, protecting not only that victim now, but also, of course, future potential victims from the same offender. And we are seeing our rate of arrest increase dramatically, and with that our rate of charge increase, which is encouraging too. We also need to get much better at dealing with offences of rape and sex crime. That's not to say that we don't already have excellent detectives and investigators working really hard to provide the very best service we can, nor that we don't achieve some really good results in respect to some very challenging cases. But it is accepted that in respect of rape and sexual offences, our rate of charge, and in partnership with criminal justice partners, our rate of conviction is too low. So that's why we're working alongside other forces and the Home Office to introduce Operation Soteria, which is a new approach to investigating rape and sex crime. It takes the very best learning from investigative experience, justice and universities to ensure that we provide the best service we can to victims, and also that we investigate the acts allegedly perpetrated by the suspects as thoroughly as we possibly can, to ensure that we get all the evidence which needs to be brought to bear when a case goes to court. And finally, in respect of violence against women and girls, we need to ensure that our public spaces feel safe and are safe. And that means making the best use of initiatives such as Operation Shield, which I'm encouraged to see us now trying in Surrey Police. What that does is it takes women and men in our police force trained in behavioural detection and able therefore to identify well before an offence takes place the behaviour of people on our nighttime economies, for example, which might be incongruous with what is going on elsewhere and which indicates their intention to prey on vulnerable people. And we're going to see many more of those sorts of initiatives. But our crime prevention and problem solving must be applied equally to other crimes such as antisocial behaviour and violence. But I mention violence against women and girls in particular because that's an area of great concern. We need to investigate crime thoroughly. Again, obvious, you might say, but Surrey does not of late have the best record in bringing criminals to justice. That means ensuring that we now follow reasonable lines of inquiry, which are given to us by victims and witnesses, whether that's a named suspect, intelligence about open space drug dealing, the Ring doorbell footage or forensic evidence, ensuring we swiftly make arrests and deal with crimes such as shoplifting robustly, because we don't want people who are spending conscientiously their own money only to see others in local shops stealing with impunity. And that means ensuring that we are protecting local shop workers working for modest wages to keep vital services going, and ensuring there's confidence that the police are out there demonstrably and robustly upholding the law. We have to pursue criminals relentlessly and swiftly before they can steal or assault or harm again. That means that we have to follow the lines of inquiry I've just spoken about. We need to make arrests of those suspects in the investigative system before they can go on and do harm again. But it also means making use of some of our lesser known powers to take money away from criminals through seizure and confiscation, thereby dismantling organised crime groups, and also making the best use of protective orders, such as those to control the activities of sex offenders or people involved very seriously in crimes such as stalking and antisocial behaviour. We must provide outstanding victim and witness care. It's a very big step when someone calls the police. We need to be at our best for the victim when for them things might be at their worst. What we see every day may well be a life event for that person, and it's so important our service is exemplary, because the victim may be our only witness, and therefore it's their evidence on which we rely to protect not only them but also, of course, the future victims on whom that perpetrator might otherwise prey. I know that I and my officers need the trust and confidence of you if we are to serve and police effectively, because without trusting us, you won't confide in us, and if you don't confide in us, we don't have the information, the intelligence, the material that we need to act on and protect you from criminals. And if you're to trust us, you should rightly expect the police to exhibit high standards of professional behaviour, and not instead to exhibit the sorts of terrible behaviour which have been so extensively reported across policing and in the national media over the last couple of years. I'm not remotely so complacent as to suppose that these sorts of terrible crimes couldn't also be committed by officers who might be serving in Surrey. And of course, there have been instances of serious misconduct on the part of Surrey officers. And that's why we are ensuring that our vetting and our re-vetting and our processes for recording misconduct and complaints are robust and vigorously carried out. You may be interested, and I hope reassured to know, that where we do see misconduct, it tends to have been reported by the colleagues of those who misconducted themselves, showing not only that frontline staff and officers try to exhibit good standards of behaviour themselves, but they will positively stand up against it where they see less than this in others. I want our police service to reflect the communities whom we serve across the range of protected characteristics, whether that's sex, gender, race, religion or disability. Not only because those are good things in and of themselves and because I want us to be representative, but because I need to ensure that Surrey Police is attracting and exploiting the potential of everyone who could be a fantastic detective, public order officer, firearms specialist, communications expert, forensic analyst, and many more branches of our occupation besides. And I can't hope to get all of that talent and potential if we recruit only from a small section of the population. So we have broadened out our recruitment campaigns insofar as we possibly can to target people with a broad range of educational qualifications and a broad range of social backgrounds, the only essential requirement being a conscientious commitment to serve the public as you would wish yourself to be served. We need, as the PCC has said, to ensure we're spending your money really wisely. I take very seriously the responsibility to ensure that we spend every last public pound entrusted to us to the greatest possible value, whether that's in neighbourhood policing, in capturing online paedophiles, in dealing with domestic abuse, in improving our response to rural crime. We need to ensure that we are operating efficiently. And that's not just because we need to ensure that we are being efficient for its own sake, but because every last wasted pound is a pound wasted in what should have been the pursuit of looking after someone who needs us. The money that's been entrusted to us could have gone elsewhere through local or central taxation, but it has instead been given to the police, and I'm determined we spend it to its greatest possible effect. And as the PCC has said, we are in challenging financial times. In common with other private and public sector organisations, we're subject to the same pressures of interest rates, inflation and wage increases, and we need to ensure that we are identifying savings wherever we can in areas such as technology, process, the way we manage our contracts, so that we can keep every last member of staff on the books of Surrey Police and serving you in the way that we want to serve you. Three final points, and these come under the heading of being here for those who need us and putting service of you ahead of any self-interest, individually, organisationally. And first of all, that means responding promptly. When you call the police, it's a big step, and we need to be there for you when you need us, whether you are calling via 999, telephone 101, digital 101, or one of our social media channels. We have rightly been taken to task over the last year for our performance in this area, which has not been good enough. But I'm pleased to say, especially in respect of that initial response, it is getting much faster and of a much higher quality. But I'm desperately anxious to create even more capacity to serve you when you need us. And that's why we're focusing very keenly on the benefits which will arise from the new Right Care, Right Person initiative. Essentially what this means is looking at those mental health cases which the police respond to. Now, of course, there are many cases where crime and mental health overlaps, but there are a good many over the years that we have gone to where perhaps there isn't a real and immediate threat to someone's life, and the care and support of that person is delivered best probably not by a police officer with coercive powers and little training in the area, but instead a mental health professional. And of course, while the officer is dealing with the person in mental health crisis, they're not responding to rural crime, to violence, to knife crime, to burglary, sex offenders and domestic abuse in a way which only we must and can. Two final points. First of all, we need to be resilient and we need to be prepared. Prepared to deal with protest on the M25, prepared to deal with large events such as the Epsom Derby and whatever challenges might arise spontaneously therein, to deal with a pandemic or the support of another police force who needs our public order or firearms specialist. That means constantly thinking, planning and considering what the threat might be, whether it's a traditional policing response or some sort of risk to our cyber security. We need to be resilient and prepared. And finally, policing is a tough business for our police staff and our police officers who see every day those things which many won't see in a lifetime, who race to things which most people race from, and who I'm very pleased and proud to say will do things which many could not or would not do. So it's important that we look after the health, the fitness and the safety of our staff and officers. We've been so fortunate recently to benefit from a great many more police officers as part of the government uplift programme, and when I shake the hands of parents at passing out parades, I feel a deep sense of responsibility to make sure that we look after their family in order that they can serve and look after the people and the public of Surrey. So thank you very much for listening, and with that I'll hand over to your Borough Commander for many of the local matters in which I'm sure you'll be very interested. Thank you.
Good evening, my name's Rob Bryan. I'm the Borough Commander for Waverley. Been in post since March this year. Within Waverley you are policed by a response team, the MPT, and investigation goes to MPIT and the CID. So within my team on neighbourhoods, I've got an office manager, two sergeants, Sergeant Phil Bayman, Sergeant Michael Knight, and they look after one predominantly from Godalming and the surrounding areas and one from Farnham. Within the team, I've got 7 PCs, one ASB officer who deals with all of the property closures, works closely with the council in multi-agency meetings, and looks at things like your PSPOs. I have 2 youth engagement officers who are fantastic. They look at the relationship between youth, the community, and will go into schools predominantly to talk to year 4, year 7, and then look at the sort of cohesion in terms of the neighbourhood set up, how people are getting on and transitioning them through to adulthood. And then 6 PCSOs who cover the areas within Waverley. You've got 2 now working out of Farnham, 2 that cover Godalming, Farncombe, and 2 that go out towards Cranley. And there's obviously recruitment that's going on in terms of improving those. The other side of it is the teams that we work with. So CID deal with all the serious crime. You've got safeguarding units, intelligence, which a lot of what you give to us comes in, goes through there and allows us to complete proactive warrants, target people who are, committing crime, people who are targeting the vulnerable, and that leads on to the closures of properties and dealing with them in terms of those offences. And we also work quite closely with the problem-solving team. The responsibility of the 7 police officers is to work at looking at longer-term chronic issues that affect you in the community, and working with the Safer Neighbourhood Partnership within CHARM meetings, which are multi-agency meetings that look at people, and JAG meetings, which look at places to deal with and make it a safer and much nicer environment. So that's the makeup of the team and who they work with. Moving forward, looking at what you can expect from Waverley, deal with the issues that are raised to us, that you raise locally. We've been going out to more meetings with local councils, local panel meetings, and listening to feedback from the community. A lot of that is about being more visible, which we are intending to be more. PCSOs out on the street in towns like Cranley, but also going further afield. I was in Churt recently at their community meeting and ensuring that they also get that visibility so that they can have confidence in us to report crime and update us with intelligence. And then as part of the Chief's plan, keeping people updated, keeping people informed as to what we're doing, showing you that we're taking everything seriously in terms of concerns, and stuff that does get reported to us, we do come straight back, we feedback, we work at what has happened, look at how we can deal with it from a problem-solving aspect and where we can move on from there. Other things we'll be looking at will be how to use data more effectively to send resources. Recently it's flagged to us that, for instance, within the rural community, they find it really difficult to report crime. It's not a 999 job, it's a 101, but they have no signal. And then by the time they get home after a long day's work, they're not reporting it to us. So I've got a sergeant who's working with that community to put stuff in place to ensure that we are getting those reports, because with those reports, we can then look at the data as to what crimes are taking place and then direct our resources in the right places. And then that will in turn increase your confidence in us that we are listening and we are doing. And then looking at playing a key role within the Waverley Partnership. So we have an ASB officer who works within Waverley in the council and the safeguarding team. And as a multi-agency team, we will work together to look at the issues, assist people, look at housing, look at environmental health and everything that goes with that to ensure that there is a joined up multi-agency response to problems that are being reported to us. And in terms of the priorities for the year ahead, is to continue to build that trust and confidence. We've been aware that we've lost a lot of that with shoplifting. As an example, we've started to work with the Cranley and Farnham bid teams, the business partners with the Waverley Council, and set up meetings so that we can go out and look at enforcement days, targeting those who are coming to Waverley to commit crime. And by doing that, just making it an undesirable place to commit crime. The focus on VORG, I have a sergeant who's working, looks at community protection warnings. They're looking at bringing those digital so that they can be more effective use of powers on the street for officers. A continued look at and a focus on ASB, the antisocial behaviour. Specifically, we've done a lot of work around Farnham and continue to do so, targeting those who have committed offences against people within that community. And looking at how we engage with our communities better through panel meetings, through meaningful engagement, actually taking time to spend time with those, listen to them and go from there. And then looking at the preventing residential burglaries, working with other teams to target people through intelligence. We've had a big push on the suspicious activity portal and getting people to report from their homes what has been happening via the online system, which has then led to prosecutions within the area. And that's what we will continue to do for you for the year ahead, and look forward to receiving any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rob, for that, and thank you, Chief Constable, as well. We've got your questions coming in. Thank you very much. We'll get to those in a moment. Please do remember you can pop questions in the comments page, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're watching us on Facebook. If we don't get to you this evening, then somebody will be in touch. And of course, as always, you can get in touch with us at any time across our various social media pages and our website. So first question that I'm going to go to is a very local one. Jane on Facebook says, first of all, thank you to Surrey Police for their work in Bramley and Wonersh in the recent few weeks. Bramley, of course, I assume is referring to the recent horrific incident of the 12 lambs being killed. I'll ask you to update us on that in a moment, Borough Commander. Jane says that recent cases have highlighted to her just how important fully investigating rural crime and separately ASB is. I would like to understand what your capacity is on these issues. Now, Borough Commander, I'll ask you to update us on that and talk about your capacity within your team. But of course, Chief Constable, this is exactly where the full force, if you like, of the team, both staff and officers at Surrey Police, comes to play when it comes to investigating crimes like this. It doesn't all happen, of course, just under Rob's team. So first of all, Rob, I wonder if you could update us on those incidents.
So in terms of the two issues that we've spoken about, 2 people were arrested and are currently on bail for those offences. So they are being looked at. What happened when Sergeant Bayman actually went out into the community and spoke to them is that it was highlighted, as I've spoken about, the issues around reporting and how that affects the community and their trust and confidence with us. So we, over the last week, and it's only been very recent, have spent time with the 2 rural officers, taking advice and getting information from them, building basically all of the stuff we need to then properly problem solve the issue. So be it through increased patrols, signage, making the areas less desirable to go and commit crime on, and increasing the reporting. And it goes back to that data and understanding the data, in that we need people to report. They haven't been reporting because the confidence has been lost, and if we can rebuild that confidence from the community, then we can look at directing the correct resources that we have available to problem solve it, and using the correct powers that we've got that would be able to enhance that.
Thank you. Chief Constable.
Well, on rural crime in particular, I'm very pleased this question has come up, because it is an area in respect of which we need to improve. And I'm under no illusions as to the importance of our rural economy and the obligation, therefore, on the part of the police to protect that. We know that rural business are the custodians of our countryside and the security of our supply of food, to name just a couple of essential points. And rural crime can seem somehow less serious, or even quaint when one puts it like that, but it's actually involved some very serious organised crime, some very serious loss to businesses. I understand, of course, that if a vital piece of equipment or a chemical goes missing on a particularly crucial day in the seasonal cycle, it could have catastrophic effects for the viability of a business. And therefore, we need to improve our initial response when people call. As the Borough Commander said, we need a strong network of police and local rural businesses to share information and intelligence. We need to work with partners in the private sector to get the access we need to security marking, so we've got a better chance of recovering stolen property when it's gone. And we need to make the full use of our resources which exist outside of your local policing teams, vital though they are. So that includes our roads policing teams, our organised crime fighting teams, and many others who we can bring to bear to tackle these problems. So I'm confident that with a more coherent approach to rural crime, we can do better. It won't be swift or immediate, because there's a lot of ground to make up, but I know that we can do better in this area.
Excellent. Thank you very much, both of you, and thank you to Jane for your question. Becky, who's also on Facebook, asks about increase in car break-ins in Farnham. She's concerned that there is no police presence. Rob, is there anything that you're aware of?
So there has been absolutely an increase in vehicle crime. I think that's been across the force, and I think it's actually been across the region. In terms of what we've been doing, we have increased patrols. It's been part of briefings for, it happens overnight. So there's been an increase in that, and an increase in the push around the suspicious activity portal, which will hopefully bring in lines of inquiry. We've certainly done some target hardening around businesses where they've been targeted for specific stuff from vehicles or plant, and looked at putting out messages on media, etc., to encourage people to report that what's happening. We've seized vehicles which have been involved, and the intelligence that comes in has gone to our intelligence teams and continues to be shared within the region, where there is a joined up approach to trying to target. We are definitely aware that there has been an increase, though. Absolutely.
Because Chief Constable, a vehicle crime and car theft in particular really is a borderless crime, isn't it? Just because somebody has their car taken in Farnham, the criminal could be from anywhere, but we do see it go across borders. So how do you, as Chief Constable, ensure that the boroughs are talking to each other, the divisions are talking to each other, and of course, as a region and beyond, we're working closely with our regional colleagues and your regional colleagues?
It's such an important question, Becky, and this really comes down to three things: intelligence, prevention and enforcement. So first of all, we need to make sure that across the local community and with the police, we are sharing information about where this is going on, because that enables us to identify the patterns of offending, which will link it to particular offenders alongside potential forensic evidence and other lines of inquiry that we might have. And as far as vehicle crime is concerned, we've seen the development of keyless vehicle theft, which is deeply concerning, not only because of the loss of the vehicles themselves, but because of the way it makes communities feel and the very dangerous way which criminals will drive the vehicles they've stolen. So people need, with respect, to take as much responsibility as they can for securing their own vehicles and their keys. And then, of course, you'll want to see enforcement. And whilst high visibility policing can be of some deterrent value, because, as the PCC said, these crimes are often committed cross-border, not only locally but internationally, there is a limit to the deterrent value of high visibility policing. But there is much that we can do through our organised crime policing, who use all of the covert methods at their disposal to recover vehicles and to bring criminals to justice. And we've seen some impressive results at court in that respect lately, and I'm very confident we're going to see some more soon.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Becky, for your question. Judith has asked us on Facebook. Hi, Judith. Something that's come up an awful lot. Judith says shoplifting has become a huge problem in our towns. What can be done to minimise this? Rob, first of all, we have seen shoplifting, haven't we, increase, not just in Surrey, but right across the country. An awful lot has been said and written about it. I know the Chief Constable will want to say some words on it as well, because it's something that he's really prioritised. In terms of in Farnham and our towns in Waverley, what's been happening around shoplifting? In
terms of shoplifting and the figures that have been coming through, the increase is down to an increase in reporting as much as it is an increase in shoplifting, which is brilliant because we are encouraging people to now report. In terms of our solved outcome rate in Waverley, we are really quite successful in terms of what we're solving. It's bringing the amount that's reported up and then keeping it at that high level of solving those crimes, which will increase the confidence within the shops. Within Waverley, we've worked, Sergeant Knight's been with shops within Farnham, has done training for staff, looked at designing out crime officers going in and to certain places and assisting with how they identify, how they report, the type of reporting, the positioning of tills, just departments within certain stores talking to each other and identifying what they're seeing within there. In terms of enforcement days, we have a month in March where we have 4 planned for different towns within Waverley, of which Farnham's included, where we'll be working with the bid officers, with the business partners, and again looking at how they assist us in terms of CCTV, the NICE system, identifying people and getting all the positive lines of inquiry there and done. And then we in turn are going back out with much more positive messaging about the successes that we've had, because that sets the tone that we are dealing with it, we are challenging with, prosecuting people, and increases the confidence again from the community, which will increase the reporting. And at some point soon we will get to a stage where hopefully they are reporting everything and we are solving a high volume of those.
That's great.
And that's the aim.
Yeah, and anybody who's in Farnham or the wider area will know Sergeant Knight. He's
Sergeant Knight and the 2 PCSOs now we've got in town who are out.
They are out and about
much more visible and really responded to what's been said
Yeah.
by the community.
That's great. Chief Constable, you and I have spoken a lot in recent months about shoplifting, and I know it's something you take incredibly seriously. So what can you say to Judith about what the force and your plan in particular overall is doing to combat this horrible crime?
It's a very important point that you raise, Judith, and it was some months ago now when I began to become particularly concerned about this in the wake of national reports, concern from business, concern from government, and also my own observations in respect of local crime and offending. And the first point to make is that shoplifting is no trivial matter. The value of the goods might not always be especially high, but it is, what they call a kind of broken windows crime. If we don't deal with it, then community confidence starts to suffer, and other types of crime will get worse around it. We know that the people working in shops are working often for modest wages. They're working early mornings and late at night to feed and support their families, and they have the right to do so without the fear of witnessing crime or being put at risk. And I think to some extent it shows the value of this form of public engagement, because when the PCC and I were out and about in person before Christmas, this came up so often as an issue that it gave us a very strong evidence base to show that we must do something about it, which is why before Christmas we had a large operation where we made tens of significant arrests, worked closely with shopkeepers across the county to increase security measures. And the Borough Commander has mentioned what's technically known as the nice DEMS system. It's really important that people engage with us on that and make use of it, because what it means simply is that you can get your CCTV footage directly to us rather than us having to collect it, which means we can bring criminals to justice more swiftly. And it might be, as some say, that shoplifters are funding a drug habit, or they're stealing out of need, or maybe they're being exploited by an organised crime group. We can get to that after the arrest and the investigation has taken its course, but we must improve our response. We are improving our response. We're making a great many more arrests, and I expect this to continue dramatically.
Excellent. Thank you very much. A couple of sort of wider, more Surrey-based rather than local questions. So one question on YouTube. It follows a recent misconduct case, Chief Constable, that you'd be aware of. And the questioner asks, how does the force ensure people that are taken into custody are protected from harm? Now, of course, this is people in custody, and our custody officers do a really, really important job. They're often unseen. It's often the unseen part of policing, of course, because nobody really wants to be in custody. And part of that wider accountability piece is carried out actually by my own office. We have something called independent custody visitors that comes under the PCC's office. These are individuals who volunteer their time. They give up several hours of their own time every month to go into custody suites, and we have 3 of them across Surrey. And they go in and much like you might get a spot check by Ofsted or another organisation, they go in unannounced and they will speak to those who are in custody. It's a really important part of the PCC role to ensure that that's being done, and our fantastic volunteers and our custody manager here, Erica Dallinger, have actually won a national award recently for it. So that's something I'm really confident about. But Chief Constable, in relation to Surrey Police's own staff and officers in custody, what work goes on to ensure that those who are taken into custody, who can be taken in at a really vulnerable time in their lives, are looked after while they're in custody?
Well, it's such a good question, and not one that I'm sure we've had. So, first of all, the treatment of detainees in custody is governed by the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, which is long established and sets out certain basic, very clear rights and entitlements in respect of things like sleep, refreshment, access to legal advice, access to appropriate support where people have particular needs or might be a juvenile, and many more of the sort of considerations you would expect. There's a very robust inspection regime in custody from the National Inspectorate, which focuses very keenly on the delivery of those rights. And we're fortunate in Surrey in that my deputy, Nev Kemp, actually leads not only for Surrey, but nationally on custody policy and practice. And it's under his foresight and excellent leadership that we've seen so many new measures introduced to ensure that detainees get the appropriate legal, medical, mental health and social care that they need. Because whilst custody is a theatre of investigation, it's also in many respects a theatre of health care too. And it's important that we, with partners, take the opportunity to ensure that people who might be in crisis or suffering from some sort of mental health concern or other medical problem get the support and attention they need whilst they're with us. And whilst I wouldn't wish in any sense to tempt fate, we have seen the rate of serious harm in custody reduce substantially. And I don't mean serious harm caused by our staff, very obviously. I mean people who've suffered a medical episode whilst in our care. And that's as a consequence very much of the improvements which have been made. There are also, as part of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, safeguards in respect of the ranks of officers who have to scrutinise people's detention at the rank of sergeant, inspector, and of course superintendent. And when we want to hold people for a very great length of time, then we actually need the authority of a magistrate as well. So there's an awful lot which goes into that. And as a real safety net, CCTV coverage is very extensive in custody now. And this does two things. It reminds officers and staff of the need for exemplary behaviour because they will be held to account otherwise. And it also moderates, in many cases, the behaviour of the detainees as well. So that's been an important innovation.
Thank you very much, Chief Constable. That's very helpful. The next question follows on a little bit, actually. There's, which is, and this is something we've talked about an awful lot. Again, it's from YouTube. Is the Chief Constable aware of and or reviewing the high use of Section 136 mental health orders? So that's, you might want to talk a bit about what Section 136 is for those who won't be aware. Including, now this is the bit I'm not entirely sure about, but including cases where individuals have full capacity or no mental health disorder. Now the use of a Section 136 on somebody who has full capacity is a different area. But do you want to talk a bit about, first of all, for those out there, what is Section 136 and 135? When do police use it? We know there's been an increase in it, and the work that you've been doing leading Surrey's Gold Group, particularly around right care, right person, to dispel some of those myths that perhaps have built up about police not attending any case where mental health is a factor.
Thank you. It's such an important question, and these legal provisions relate to the powers invested in police officers to detain someone who poses a risk to themselves or to others as a consequence of apparent concerns with their mental health. And whilst one can't speak for every individual case, I'm confident that it's not a power which officers use lightly, because there entails some very onerous responsibilities after using that power in respect of the need to make sure that the person gets the appropriate assessment from a mental health specialist and the appropriate place to be taken to. And very often this is where police officers have lately encountered difficulty, because we appreciate, of course, the pressure on partners in mental health services, but it's not always the case that the officer finds that there is somewhere for the person to be accommodated, or indeed that they get the assessment within the time that we would ordinarily expect. This, of course, means that not only that the person who is in need of expert care isn't being helped as swiftly as we would always like, but it means that the police officer is not responding to the rural crime, the domestic abuse, the antisocial behaviour, the shoplifting, or many other serious offences which only we can get on with. So I emphasise that our relationship with partners in health and mental health is excellent, and we're working very closely with them to try and develop new working practices which ensure not only that we get the right care to the right person at the point of need, but also that the police officers are then freed up to get on with those things which only we can do.
Thank you very much. Adrian, on Facebook, how are you measuring the effectiveness of non-frontline services such as engagement and media? Now, that's a really interesting question, actually, because one of the things that's come up consistently for us during the 22 of these meetings, and this is the last of our 22, although we are out and about in the communities every week doing residents' meetings, and one of the things that's come up consistently is communication, isn't it? But I can understand why somebody would ask, how do we measure the effectiveness of what they consider to be a non-frontline service? But people consistently tell us they want to hear more, they want to access us more, they want to hear more from their Borough Commander about what's going on. So how, as Chief Constable, do you measure that?
Well, it's a very difficult thing to measure quantitatively, of course, but it's such an important question because policing in this country is founded on the principle that the police are the public and the public are the police, and that we police by consent. And that maxim is best served by our being as transparent as we possibly can. And I'm very clear to my senior colleagues that there will of course be some cases where we can't, for reasons of operational security, report on what we are doing. But overall, we must give as much information as we can about the crime fighting that we are getting on with, because what I think that does, it enables people to make their own judgment about how well we're doing, and it shows people the value of reporting crime, being witnesses, giving intelligence, because then we get a virtuous cycle of information coming in, we act on it, hopefully get success, you trust us more, give us more information, and we get better still. I would like us to be more forthright than perhaps we have in the past in the reporting of some of our crime fighting successes, but we're definitely seeing more of that lately, which is extremely encouraging, because I think it also acts as a very powerful recruiting officer for Surrey Police. I hope that if someone sees a report of a conviction of a rapist at court, or someone who subjected a partner to a lifetime of domestic abuse, or someone who's preyed on a vulnerable person through fraud, that will not only give them confidence in the police, but make them think, I'd like to join that crime fighting endeavour myself as a call handler, a police officer, a detective, or any other such endeavour. So I know that the excellent colleagues we have in communications who are working to bring this to you today always have in mind 2 or 3 key things. What do we want the public to feel? What do we want them to know? And what do we want them to do in order they can engage and help us? And I'm sure we can improve us in every area, but I'm very confident and pleased with the service they provide.
Excellent. I see it in my own office as well, of course. I have a much smaller engagement team, obviously, than the force does, quite rightly, but they all work incredibly hard, making sure that these kind of events happen, make sure that I'm fulfilling my statutory duty to represent the public and to you, and it's incredibly important work. And of course, with our partners as well, the vast majority of my team, who of course are not frontline, are actually liaising with and ensuring that the charities locally are getting properly funded.
And I should just mention one other thing actually on this point, because of course our communications team really come into their own when we deal with large-scale incidents. Yeah. So whether it's a protest on the M25, whether it's the Epsom Derby and events which might emerge dynamically there, such as protest, a homicide, some other large major inquiry, the ability of a really skilled communications team who understand what they can say and what they can't say, just in case they compromise criminal proceedings, but in so doing, try to give the public the information that they need at the point where they need it is invaluable, and Surrey is very competent in that respect, in my experience.
Thank you very much, and that's a good note on which to end as we have come to time. My own communications team, small team they are, would not forgive me if I don't remind you again. If you get a chance, please do in the next, you've got until 12 o'clock tomorrow. Please do have a look at the QR code, which I'm sure is coming up on screen in a moment, or is in the chat, there it is, and take an opportunity to fill in the survey. Tell us what you want Surrey Police to focus on over the coming months, and of course you still have a chance until midday tomorrow to tell us your thoughts on the amount of council tax that you think is sensible to pay over the coming year. Thank you very much to everybody in the studio. Thank you to the Chief Constable, to the Borough Commander, to Susan, who has been signing. And as this is our last meeting, thank you so much to all of you who have joined us. Thank you to everybody here at Mount Brown who has made all of these meetings possible, both in person and online. Have a safe evening. Thank you and goodbye.